Cek cek satu dua tiga. Oke, cek cek satu dua. Cek satu dua tiga. Suara dari dalam. Cek cek satu dua tiga. Cek cek satu dua tiga. Cek satu dua tiga. Cek cek satu dua tiga.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bapak Ibu sekalian yang berada di seat belakang mungkin bisa berpindah ke seat depan. Nanti biar kalau di foto itu bisa muncul di frame. Ladies and gentlemen, please to take a seat in the front row. So we in the one frame when we take a picture. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good morning, dear colleagues. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Pandu Prayoga as Master Ceremony today's book discussion. Welcome to our Research Center for Politics, BRIN, and at Tuesday, May 6 to 20 and 25 at Seminar Room, Widya Sarwono Building 7th floor, BRIN, Campus Gatot Subroto, Jakarta. This event will discuss the book by Dr. Kevin Henry Villanueva. We believe that this event will contribute fruitfully to the latest discussion on the competition and cooperation in ASEAN. Before we proceed to the program today, first of all, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to our distinguished speakers and chair, our director of the Research Center for Politics. We also like to thank the seminar interns who organized today's discussion. Last but not least, all participants, including our YouTube channel viewers. Thank you, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to invite Dr. Erin as Director of Research Center for opening remarks. Dr. Erin, time is yours.
Thank you. Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Maraming selamat. I hope you are all happy to be here this morning. And I think we are very lucky today that Gavin is willing to discuss his new book with us today with our esteemed discussant, Dr. Sirojuddin Arif, PhD from the University of Islamic International Indonesia, and also our colleague Khanisa MA from the Research Center for Politics of the Research and Innovation National Agency. I would like to say a few words on behalf of the Center, Research Center for Politics and of BRIN. My name is Irene Hirasori Gayatri, and I've been working with the center since the reform period, so it's quite long. And I've been also probably 1 or 2 years with the research team of ASEAN in my institute. And it's quite encouraging to see the audience today, meaning that at the back of our minds, ASEAN still has a place in our hearts and minds, especially if you are an active person in this region, as a person who always follow and also be part of the ASEAN activities. In terms of the book that we are going to discuss this morning, Kevin had a good way to narrate his personal view and also observation about the original encounters. Hence, the title of the book is The Paradigm of Original Encounters. As a supporter of one of the global agenda, women, peace, and security in ASEAN and also in Indonesia, I must also mention to you that Indonesia learned from the Philippines. Both countries started probably the same period after the ASEAN crisis. So we started to learn on how to shed the light on how ASEAN member states should behave in terms of issues that commonly marginalized within the realms of international relations. Hence, this perspective was quite succinctly caught in the foreword of this book. So I don't want to drag my welcome speech because this is precisely the task of two discussions this morning, Bapak Sirojuddin and Ibu Khanisa Krisman. But to be honest, I look forward to read the whole book in few hours. The Zion version of the book, thank you so much, shared by Sasa the other day. And I wish the discussion succeeded. And also, please participate in the question and answer. This is, I think, a best way for people to people diplomacy. Yeah. Because I don't know what happened if there is no people in ASEAN. It's not elite diplomacy in ASEAN as organization. There are some skepticisms in seeing ASEAN recently, especially under the guise of the Trump's tariff that hit many countries in Southeast Asia and many other corners of the world. And I think as part of the ASEAN, we as intellectuals can shed the light and find probably rational way out to this. And I think constructivism could provide a home to find alternative ideas. So thank you very much and God bless you all. Please give applause to the owner of the book and also to discussion. Oh, I've also wanted to extend my gratitude to the Philippine Embassy, especially Chair the affairs of the Philippine Embassy, Bapak Gonaranao B Musor as the chair. So the second, I will also give this back to Pandu Prayoga. Thank you.
Thank you, Mbak Iren, for your opening remarks. Now we move to photo sessions. I would like to invite, yeah, His Excellency and Mr. Gonoranao B Musor. I apologize if I misspelling your name. As a chair of discussion and charge the affairs of the Philippine Embassy in Jakarta. And I would like to invite Mas Sirojuddin Arif, Mbak Khanisa, and the writer of the book, Dr. Kevin Henry, to take the picture. Oh yeah, with Mbak Irin also. Oh yeah. Before we take the photo, Mbak Irin would like to give a token of appreciation to the speakers and chair. Please. Terima kasih. Mungkin bisa kembali ke kursi. Ya. Ya, kita bergerak ke acara berikutnya yaitu discussion. Kepada our honorable chair, time is yours.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. My name is Musor. I'm the CDA of the Philippine Embassy in Jakarta. First of all, thank you very much for inviting us to be part of this of the launch of this book by Dr. Kevin. So I think we can now proceed with the gist of the program. So we can start off by inviting our two discussants to provide their respective perspectives on this book written by Dr. Kevin. So we'll start off by calling Dr. Sirojuddin Arif. He's now the okay. So before that, first we give the floor to the author himself, Dr. Kevin Henry Villanueva. So just to give a brief background on our author, he's the first professorial fellow at the University of the Philippines for his pioneering work on consensus diplomacy while advocating for an ASEAN School of International Relations. He's also the founding director of the ASEAN Research Institute for Strategic Studies and Enterprise. So this is the first think tank in the Philippines devoted to the critical analysis and strategic policy research on ASEAN regional integration. He has a BA from Ateneo de Manila, a Master of Science degree from the London School of Economics, and a PhD from the University of Leeds. So, ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Dr. Kevin Henry Villanueva.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, I am delighted and honored to be welcomed into the BRIN. I thank from the bottom of my heart our hosts, and I would also like to welcome our distinguished guests from the various universities and research institutions who are present here today, and our representatives from the member countries of ASEAN, and those who come from other representatives of our countries in the world. Let me begin. World politics is a game of order. The players are states. But if the players will not admit to the freedom of all the peoples in the world, not only the peoples of China, but also the peoples of Taiwan, not only the peoples of Russia, but also the peoples of the Ukraine, and not only the peoples of Israel, but also the peoples of the land of Palestine, then the order of the game that exists by states must be remade. Visible to the naked eye are the realities of interstate aggression, genocide, and the climate crisis, which is far from the proposition of an international society of states in which the great powers, through the UN Security Council, carry the burden of maintaining international peace and security. The single framework which underpins the UN as an organization is the sovereignty of states. The units of states sit side by side in peaceful coexistence. They are independent of each other by default. They coalesce when needs and opportunities arise, primarily in terms of promoting economic welfare and national security. In principle, it is all accepted In practice, it has worked for many of the mighty and for a few of the weak. On the 75th anniversary of the UN, The Economist entitled its report on the international organization, and I quote, "Missing in Action." A cursory glance at its history manifests the system bias of the current international order. In 1965, the Security Council expanded from 11 to 15 members. But whereas it included 22% of the world's population in the General Assembly in 1945, it now has just 8%. The permanent five remain the victorious powers 80 years ago, with no representation from Latin America, Africa, or South Asia. In the meantime, this ought not to distract us from the competition for power and prestige emanating from other regions of the world. The rivalries between African states prevent them from specifying whom they would pick to occupy a permanent seat. The group of BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have failed to support each other's candidacies for permanent seats in the Security Council. China has been non-committal about India's bid for permanent membership, whereas Russia has been lukewarm towards any kind of expansion of the Security Council. All of this is according to the report. What runs afoul? In his last major work, Henry Kissinger revealed that what passes for order in our time, the Westphalian peace devised in Western Europe in the 17th century, and I quote, reflected a practical accommodation to reality, not a unique moral insight. It relied on a system of independent states, refraining from interference in each other's domestic affairs, and checking each other's ambitions through a general equilibrium of power. Over the course of at least 3 centuries, therefore, the world outside of the West has tried to adapt to the expansion and the evolution of the Westphalian system. We have inherited tools that were devised to fasten a European world that between the 17th and 18th centuries transformed from a unity to a collectivity of states. Europe, F.H. Hinsley tells us, became a unity as well as a diversity. A unity because of its diversity. What is crucial to understand, however, was not the fact that Europe began to see itself politically several. But in light of world politics today, how it began to organize itself as several and rival political systems, each grouped around a great power. If we are created as equal peoples everywhere, I ask myself, does this present a fair and honest vision of the world for the future? In one thing, Kissinger was right. No truly global world order has yet existed. The model for our comprehension of international relations is rooted in a world that is gone, and hence from within a horizon of possibilities that belongs to the past. It is time for political imagination. If we desire to see the peoples of Taiwan, the Ukraine, and of Palestine no more than the peoples of Israel, Russia, and China, free and equal in dignity, this is where it can begin. What if, as rival political communities, we are grouped around each other, not around a great power? What if what we have is a society of peoples, not of states? If we see ourselves as a unity or as a collectivity of peoples, how different or unique would that be to the world we have borrowed from the past? No longer shall we be independent of each other as sovereign states. We will live with each other as peoples in togetherness. No longer shall we live with each other on the basis of conflict. We will live with each other on the basis of cooperation. In contradistinction to the principle of sovereignty, the principle of togetherness is founded on the unconditional promise to not hurt each other, to care for each other, and to protect each other. Togetherness is the world of a sea of peoples. They are bound to each other not because they have rights as individuals who are strangers, but because they have responsibilities as members of a people. No less than as peoples, they have responsibilities as members of a greater humanity, in which they are not opposed as strangers, but favored as kin. I wish to claim a world governed by a humanist paradigm. The frame of our lens will not be citizenship above the state, but kinship as the common life and political culture of humanity. If we fix our gaze on the game of order, as well as on the rules of how order is played out on the stage of world politics, then our idea of what order means must be distinguished from the general sense in which it is used. To begin with, we must distinguish between world order and international order. In 1977, Hedley Ball, in his work The Anarchical Society, wrote with great clarity. World order is wider than international order. To give an account of it, we have to deal notably with order among states, but also with order on a domestic or municipal scale, provided within particular states, and with order within the wider world political system, of which the state system is only part. World order, he says, and he writes, is more fundamental and primordial than international order, because the ultimate units of the great society of all mankind are not states or nations, tribes, empires, classes, or parties, but individual human beings, which are permanent and indestructible in a sense in which groupings of them, of this or that sort, are not. This is the moment for international relations, but the question of world order arises whatever the political or social structure of the globe. Finally, world order is morally prior to international order. To take this view is to broach the question of the value of world order and its place in the hierarchy of human values. It is necessary to state at this point, however, that if any value attaches to order in world politics, it is order The world is us. Kinship is sama-sama. Kami, tayo, at kita. In contradistinction to the maxim, all for one and one for all, like NATO, kinship is all for all. There is nothing outside of us. The world begins and ends where and when we take care of each other. This is the world of peoples. Who then are peoples? Peoples have a name. They call themselves how they would like us to call them. Peoples have a language. They have their own story to tell. Number 3, peoples have a God. They worship and pray together. Number 4, peoples are families. They love more than they would fear each other. In this regard, peoples are equal in respect and dignity. This is the first proposition. As we must protect and love us and ourselves, they who protect and love their own and themselves also count as peoples. They have value and dignity. If they are not together, we cannot protect and love them. They must strive to be together. This is when the genius and the spirit of a people is born, and it is through their symbols, their name, their story, their God, and their love for each other that we recognize each other as a people. Could I have a time check? We can test this through a thought experiment that I have devised. It is called the archipelagic dilemma. And it is here that I wish to end and invite you to read the little book, The Paradigm of Original Encounters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kevin. Just to quickly highlight some takeaways, and I hope this would be another reason for our attendees to be able to appreciate and buy the book. It's interesting how you gave the context of questioning the existence of a world order, or probably highlighting the weaknesses that it has so far shown through time. And then at the same time, you mentioned about coming up with the humanist paradigm. So it's all about going back to the basics, going back to the level of the grassroots, the people, and how we could somehow situate it in the ASEAN context. So probably not to preempt the discussion, I would now give the floor to our two discussants, so to give their additional perspectives on the presentation made by Dr. Kevin. So we will start off by calling on Dr. Sirojuddin Arif. So he's now the lecturer from the Universitas Islam International Indonesia. He's also a researcher for the Institute for Advanced Research. He has a PhD in political science from Northern Illinois University. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Dr. Siro.
So I would like to share my comments of to a couple of things. One is on the substance of the book, which is the what is in the book, and the second is the idea of the book, and the second is how the idea can be implemented. So let me begin by saying that this is a small but thoughtful book. I met Kevin maybe a couple of years ago, and I was really inspired by the way he thinks about the world. He starts from the idea, the big idea. And this book is I believe this is just a seminal work on which many things will be developed. This is the foundation, the idea, the foundation of the idea on which maybe article or maybe books will be further written on how this idea can be implemented, on how this idea maybe can be translated into several smaller things. That's what I think, and I hope that this discussion can help Kevin to share to shape the idea. So on the idea, the big thought that Kevin would like to share with us somehow, for me, somehow is against the mainstream. Mainstream may be my what I think, and somehow it's the thing that I took for granted. What I mean is that the world, as I know, is we have what we have as the state. That the world order is the order of the state. But Kevin would like to challenge the idea by saying that no, actually, it's not the state. Let's think the world in somehow differently. The idea is not the state, but individual. In terms of the let's say the ideas from the international relations, maybe the way I think is shaped by realist perspective. But Kevin would like to challenge us and move toward what people call as constructivist. That actually the reality is what we think about. The reality is not given. The reality is what we make of it. That's what people like Arendt would like to make it. So, but here is the thing. It is true that the idea is can be independent, and maybe in terms of the necessity, maybe the idea that Kevin remind us is very, very important today, given the massive changes that now we are facing with the rise of China and the intense competition between the China and the United States, and how this competition changed the world. So this constructivist idea that okay, the foundation of us individuals rather than the state, rather than the political society, but its kinship. But now the question is, we have to take the fact that in reality we have what we call as the state. It exists out there. It might shape the way we think about the reality. So the way Kevin would like to challenge the idea of the state, I think needs to be grounded in let's say in the brute fact. Other than individuals, there is a state. Even constructivists like Amitav Acharya, and the way when he think about the ASEAN as security community, I think he doesn't neglect the state itself, but he tries to put the individual within the state and how the interconnection between individual and the state might act together and shape how the world affect us and how we live in the world. So that's the number one. Number two is, now if we think about how we implement this idea, right? How this idea that now we would like to move from the basic idea that we start from the state, and now we start from the individuals. I think that's the big thought from Kevin. Now, if we would like to go into that idea, I think that there are many areas that Kevin need to think further. At least if you think about the international order, we think about security. That's number one, peace and security. But ASEAN, it seems to me that ASEAN is not only about the security. Okay, it's also about how we deal with the security dilemma. Certainly, there's a problem with that. But ASEAN is also about the socio-economic development. So I think this small thought-provoking book need to be further explored in the sense, if Kevin could give us more empirical substance in how actually individuals can navigate between the relationship between the state in many different areas. Let's say security, number one, certainly. Number two is something like socioeconomic development. There can be many examples in which conflict within the state might affect individuals and how individuals might shape and navigate the conflict. So I remember a few months ago, the context is if we go with this direction, right, we have to think about how actually individuals think about this messy reality. So we at IIIU, we conducted a survey asking Indonesians how they think about the policy by the state. The option somehow is whether they think when the state involved in big problem in international order, it can be trade, it can be interstate dispute. So what do they think the best policy that state should be taken? Whether their government should compromise with other states in order to make a better solution, or actually their government would prioritize their national interest, whatever it is. And surprisingly, within the Indonesian community, most people actually they take the realist position that actually the state should prioritize their national interest rather than making compromise with other government. So that's the thing that I need. Kevin would need to think further how to pursue this big idea, if it is an alternative to what, let's say, in the status, the realist argument, which dominate the way we think about the global order right now. So how, two things, right? How the state could behave according to this new idea, that number one. Number two is how individual within each state could also behave in that direction, given the fact that actually in some states like Indonesia, most of the people, rather than think in constructivist way, they think in realist way. And the way to do that, I think it would be great if the author could explore more, let's say at least two things: how this idea of people first can be implemented given the conflict we have, given the dispute they have in, let's say, security and, let's say, economic order. ASEAN can be a specific way, right? That some people say, okay, we have the way we talk is around the consensus, but actually consensus is some people say it's not the end in itself rather than the mean. So that's why maybe in the diplomat from Western countries will believe, oh, this only talk and talk without real action. My last point, I imagine that if we think about individuals and we help each other by passing the state, something like what happened in Rohingya should not be happen, right? But again, individual within this community, whether you call it security community or political community, actually the way they behave is mediated by the state. That it is the state that finally have a say in conflict, in issues like the Rohingya in Myanmar. So I think that's the thing that we need. We would like to hear further from Kevin how we think about these issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pa Siro. Before I call on the next discussant, I would just like to highlight some of the, I think Dr. Siro highlighted some important questions that hopefully later on we can address, namely taking off from what Dr. Kevin said about the concepts that he discussed behind this book. How do we then apply it in terms of how does each country in the ASEAN, for example, would translate it to actual foreign policy? And how does people, coming from each ASEAN country would behave as guided by what Dr. Kevin is talked about in his presentation. So maybe later on we can further explore these questions during the discussion. But now I would like to call on the second discussant. She's a researcher from the National Research and Innovation Agency. She has a master's degree in international relations from Australia National University and a bachelor's degree in political science and international relations from UGM. So ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Ibu Khanisa Krisman.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I would also like to congratulate Dr. Villanueva for his book. And I will start by following Dr. Sirojuddin's note. And I agree that how to realize this very interesting idea of the people of ASEAN. And let me start with, I think this book really reminds us for the importance of the people within ASEAN itself, as we would like to see ASEAN is not only a political enterprise that will a very elitist one, but we want to see how ASEAN can grow with the people of ASEAN. And I think this book reminds us about development of the third pillar of ASEAN, the social cultural pillar, that I think by building the people, we will ultimately give a strong basis for the other two pillar to stay strong, and that is political security and the economic pillar. But of course, this is the ideal model where we want the people to build the ASEAN. We want a very bottom up structure that is strong for this regional organization. But again, that's the ideal one, as we know that we face the challenge of how to actually make ASEAN felt by the people. It's always been the question for the organization itself. So when we say people-centered ASEAN, people-oriented ASEAN, how to make the people in the center, and how to orient the ASEAN itself for the advantage of the people. In this context, actually, our research center have this research group called ASEAN Research Group. We have studied ASEAN as an organization, and as well as Southeast Asian issues for quite a long time now, I guess from the 90s. So we have also Professor Luhu Lima here as one of our seniors that teach us actually the problem to make ASEAN felt is always there. And when we always been researching on how ASEAN can give the advantage of how it's built to the people itself. And in my time as a researcher, a very short term indeed, since 2011, in each research that I join, we always stumble upon the problem of an elite ASEAN vis-a-vis the people of ASEAN, how to make it felt. In Indonesia, we have this words called bagaimana membumikan ASEAN, how to make ASEAN felt by the people. Membumikan means make it arrive in Earth. I like how to bring ASEAN to the people, and this is where the question pop up: is it ASEAN really for the people? And as Dr. Sirojuddin also highlight, the constructivist ideas is we want ASEAN for the people, but how to realistically do that? And I think there's a part in my thought that realistically it's easier to accept that ASEAN is never meant to be inclusive for the people. I mean, like, just let it go. It never will be. But I think if we want to be a bit positive about it, I think inclusivity is ASEAN is indeed an elitist one, but it's not a bad thing, because when it's elitist, the task is then how the voice of the people can be channeled by the representative in the regional level. How the major task then ensuring that the representative within the regional can really absorb the voices of the people as they must, as it is their work to do. And I think there are many homeworks to be done with that. We have in Indonesia itself, we have the problem of bureaucratics problem. We have the changes of elites. We have changes of agenda, etc., etc., where actually the voices of the people always lost in the context, always lost when one bureaucrat's changing to the other. So like, where's the who to whom the people should talk to? It's always been the problem. But I think we having a totally negative note on that will not give us any benefits. And I think there are examples where voices of the people and interests of the people can be realized in ASEAN. I would like to highlight one example that actually signed under Indonesia's chairmanship back in 2003. That is ASEAN Declaration of the Placement and Protection of Migrant Fisher, and that's, I think, a very good example of how ASEAN can really take a how ASEAN can develop a very particular problem which faced by migrant people at sea, and how this declaration showed that the concern of the people can be heard not only nationally but also voiced regionally. And this is the connection we always want in ASEAN, how ASEAN can be for the people and how the people can be heard in ASEAN. And I think this example highlight where the people located within the grand scheme of this regional politics. The when If we go back to the context of Dr. Kevin Villanueva's book, the togetherness, the consensus, the how the dilemma of the being people that not being heard in Westphalian order. I think this is the important thing to remember, that people can be heard as long as the homework of make the voices delivered is done. Uh, and I think there will be more example about that we can be learned, and I believe that we can as there are I think people here also wants to discuss it. This is the thing that interesting to be discussed. Where can we deliver the voice of the people? I think that's all for me. I'm giving back the mic to the chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ibu Khanisa. I think what's interesting about what Ibu Khanisa said was, I think she took it a bit further based on what Pa Siru just said about using the concepts and ideas that was presented by Dr. Kevin, and using it as a framework in terms of coming up with a critique of ASEAN as we see it right now. Because ASEAN is of course not a perfect institution. It has its own weaknesses, but it's still also a work in progress. So maybe to jumpstart the discussion, probably may I invite our participants also to post their questions so that Dr. Kevin also can address them immediately before we start the response from the author himself. So are there any questions from the body? So anyway, maybe while okay, we have one. Okay, please state your name.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Ganewati Wuryandari. Okay. Okay. My name is Ganewati Wuryandari. I'm a researcher at the Research Center for Politics in BRIN. First of all, congratulations to Dr. Kevin for your new publication of your book. And I really enjoy for this topic of discussion. Your main proposition in the presentation based on your book, I think is very ideal. Even though partly I agree, some of them, but I think it's quite very difficult if we would like to implement it. My question regarding about your proposition is about the problem how to implement, because because I think realism right now is currently is more dominant compared to the liberalism, that this is the one of the principle which world order created since 1945. But now we are looking the word now right now is more about talking about national interest, competitions, about power politics, and so on. So I think with that kind of situation, so under what condition that the word order based on your idea, based on the togetherness, can be implemented, and the word which is now is more dominant of realism. I think there is some requirement to be implemented in this this situation, I think. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I see is someone raising a hand before we give the floor to Dr. Kevin. Okay, so anyway, while waiting for the others to formulate a question, so yeah, just to echo what the question was just given. So basically, she mentioned about realism being the prevailing narrative or perspective right now in the international order. So am I right in saying that you are asking how, in terms, she's asking about the how do we operationalize the concepts that you just said in terms of applying them to ASEAN, given that the prevailing narrative right now is realism. And actually, to be honest, me, I'm not a political science major. I come from a psychology and communications background, and I'm familiar with the humanist perspective. And I remember from my classes when I was a student, is one of the main criticisms about coming up with the humanist perspective is it's too idealistic. It might be too, for some, see it as naive, and given that realism right now is a prevailing reality. So how do you balance that narrative against the humanist perspective and being able to apply that? And then just to add more, taking from what Dr. Siru and Ibu Khanisa said, how do we then actually apply it to ASEAN, given the many issues that it has, it has encountered? They mentioned already the issue of the Rohingyas, and then of course, right now, of course, West Philippine Sea is another issue. So how then do we apply what you just said in the context of ASEAN?
All right. Thank you for all the questions. Thank you, Dr. Siru, Ma'am Khanisa. Questions are spot on, and they're extremely difficult. I will try to answer as best as I can at this stage of the intellectual project. Okay. And I think I should wrestle with the question also in terms of the idea or the substance, this substantive idea. And at the same time, how can this idea be implemented? Because it is an activist research agenda. Okay. And I think one way to somehow frame, to be fair, to be able to frame this, is to start from where we are, which is the state, what we're working with now. Let me read, okay, very shortly, all right, the work of Michael Walzer, who has clearly thought out, right, what he calls the legalist paradigm. It's the International Society of States. and how, when there are injustices which happen in the global realm, we can somehow disregard, okay, this theory of aggression when states attack each other. Okay, I think this is crucial because it follows from what we call the just war tradition. Okay, so it is a tradition that takes into consideration the conventions of law and order, which we are all familiar with. Okay, which we are all familiar with, but which I clearly wish to challenge. Okay, it is also a dangerous path because, in principle, I would really like to avoid talking in their terms, right? But at the same time, I have to do it, right? What he says is this. So the political community with its government, that is the state, is still the critical arena of political life. It has not been transcended. And there are two important reasons, I think, for hesitating a long time before attempting the transcendence. This is along the lines of the questions of Siro. The first reason, he says, is prudential. If the outcome of political processes, in particular communal arenas, is often brutal, then it ought to be assumed that outcomes in the global arena will often be brutal too. And this will be a far more effective and therefore a far more dangerous brutality, for there will be no place left for political refuge and no examples left of political alternatives. I like the way he thinks because he and I think in communal terms. Okay, but I'm coming from a different tradition, if you wish. The second reason, he says, has to do with the very nature of political life. Politics, as distinct from mere coercion and bureaucratic manipulation, depends upon shared history, communal sentiment, accepted conventions, upon some extended version of Aristotle's friendship. All this is problematic enough in the modern state. It is hardly conceivable on a global scale. Communal life and liberty requires the existence of relatively self-enclosed arenas of political development. All good. And he says, break into the enclosures and you destroy the communities. And that destruction is a loss to the individual members unless it rescues them from massacre, enslavement, or expulsion. A loss of something valuable which they clearly value and to which they have a right, namely their participation in the development that goes on and can only go on within the enclosure. Hence, the distinction of state rights and individual rights, right? And it's clear from the way Siro is talking that these, I think you share these assumptions, right? Between the individual and how the individual can therefore, if the individual participates in the state, right? How can the state therefore participate in, or how can we think about the state participating in the context of togetherness, all right? Without compromising the individual, okay? In the development that goes on and only go on within the enclosure. Hence, the distinction of state rights and individual rights is simplistic and wrong-headed. Against foreigners, individuals have a right to a state of their own. Against state officials, they have a right to political and civil liberty. Without the first of these rights, the second is meaningless. As individuals need a home, so rights require allocation. Those are two reasons. Okay. So if the issue, or what seems to be the dilemma, is how do we transcend the present order, if you wish? How do we transcend it? The metaphor, I think, is crucial. The language which he uses in terms of what a state is. The metaphor that he uses is enclosure. All right. It is an enclosure, number one. So the enclosure somehow assumes that there are, boundaries. And these boundaries, although this is not how he thinks, these boundaries, I think, move inwards and not outwards. It's inside, moving inside and not outside. But the second is that he also assumes a kind of a theory of rights, that we own, that we possess something. All right. And I think this is where it becomes controversial. If we talk about peoples, do we make the same assumptions? This is where I have many miles to go. Do we make the same assumptions if we talk about peoples? Number one, are peoples like states enclosures? I don't think so. I do not honestly think so. Because I see peoples as subjects of humanity. They're not subjects of a system. Like I said, I see them as living things. All right. So I see them as navigating a fluid world as opposed to a world which is static. So I do not see them as communities, enclosures. Take note that at the end of the day, the project here is grammatical. I am not yet trying to explain something. I am providing the language through which some kind of explanation might I wish to happen. So enclosure. Number two, rights. I do not necessarily think that a theory of peoples, if we wish, an idea of peoples, can actually be founded primarily on a theory of rights. I think we have to start talking about responsibilities, duties, accountability, not this is mine, right? Or this is ours. Because the way I see peoples is that you're living in one earth, in one planet. So there is some kind of shared responsibility that has to be made, that has to be claimed and made explicit. This is where ASEAN not only provides a reference point, but a potential space for contestation. Because like you rightly said, ma'am, we keep on talking about people-oriented, so on and so forth, but there is some kind of domination on the part of state elites, not the people. So let me jump to the fourth point, although I have three. The fact that it is a work in progress should not be a justification for what is happening in ASEAN. It is a work in progress, but it has to work in the direction of the people. And this is where the vocabulary that I wish to put out is not only a vocabulary to solve some kind of problem, but to be critical about the kind of problem-solving mechanisms that we have. So to answer, Ma'am Khanisa, I'm sort of moving between theory, idea, and practice. Consensus, ma'am, has to be all the way down. In fact, let me be more radical. I think consensus will not work on the level of ASEAN if we as peoples in our small villages, in our communities, did not practice consensus. I think what's going on the level of ASEAN is because we have traditions and cultural practices of consensus. We have invented consensus for international politics. It is the only regional organization that by default, beginning to end, uses consensus. There is no other regional organization in the world that uses consensus. So we have to ask ourselves, why is that so? Why are we the only ones? Are we the only ones who are naive? I don't think so. If you are present at the negotiations, we are just as intelligent as the West. So are we naive in pursuing consensus? There is a reason for that. So we have to ask ourselves, why do we insist on that? If it works to our disadvantage, why do we persist in consensus? That is where I think we have to be brave and say, we have to do something about it. I don't know what kind of language this is, but I think one way of looking at it is this kind of this kinship, this togetherness. And we have to be brave because this is something that we have to push our leaders in thinking. They have to know that consensus is not all the way down, it is down all the way up. They get their power from us. And this is where I think peoples have a promise. In that sense, yes, inclusivity has to be challenged. All of these notions, centrality has to be challenged. They're all statist terms, and they're all elitist terms. Centrality has to be challenged. What the hell is that? Inclusivity has to be challenged. What the hell is that? Right? So, if we are looking at consensus, then Ma'am Khanisa is right. How did we come up with these declarations? When I started thinking about the book, it came through my ethnographic work on the negotiation of the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration. And let me simplify that, okay, in terms. There are some states that appoint their representatives. There are some states that go through some kind of selection process. I do not mean to say that they are democratic, but there are some states that go through that. What that means is that the political processes in every state, okay, is different. All right. Indonesia, all right. Thailand, there is some kind of selection going on. They're not merely appointed. Different from the case of Singapore, different from the case of, and so on and so forth. In the case of the Philippines, you had a woman, all right, a lady who fought for women's rights, but who did not follow what the states. She was independently thinking on her own toes, right? So what am I trying to say here? Consensus allows that these entities come together with their own processes, but at the same time, all of them are equal. So their political systems are actually seen as equal on or at the negotiating table. You may be Indonesia with 260, 280 million people. We may be Brunei with 500, 600,000 people. But at the end of the day, we are equal. You are not stronger than us. We respect each other as peoples. That is the beauty of ASEAN. How does that now translate into what Ma'am Khanisa says, from an elite to the people? How do we do bagay mumbikan? Mambumikan. How do we do mambumikan? Right. If we really want to be creative, we live in a world now that is highly digitalized. Perhaps the kind of platforms that we should exploit should look into social media, forms of digitalization, which our governments will have to reckon with. But But it would have to be kinship, or togetherness would have to be some kind of a movement. It would have to be some kind of a movement in which these communities on their lowest scale are aware of what their identities are, not necessarily their rights. So we have to start framing what these concepts are. That is one. So in terms of platform, I think it's crucial. Number two, if we have a platform, we obviously need a language, and this is more complex, right? Hence, ma'am, you were talking about the declaration of, was this on migrants? Yeah. Of migrant fishers. All right. Which is, I think thank you. I shall look into that. But there will be, I think, interesting similarities in terms of the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration, in terms of how this was all negotiated. Who were there? Was civil society invited? Who is civil society? Do they live in the country, or are they civil society members, which are, from, I don't think the dichotomy helps, but do they come from outside? Are they actually living in situ? Are they in situ, so that they can understand what the people actually want? And third, there is education, which I think also will work on various levels. Education as a formal social institution. So how is ASEAN, for example, being taught? How is it being taught in the textbooks? Okay. Before a couple of months ago, I didn't tell my son, who is studying ASEAN. He's now 13 years old, but this got global social studies, and I secretly bought the book, and I said, let me study, let me see how they are teaching ASEAN. Are they teaching ASEAN in a legalist, formal, institutional, functional way, or are they teaching ASEAN as a culture or as a movement? That is crucial. How do we actually form the minds of our children in terms of the world in which they are waking up to? There has been a movement a couple of years back that we sing not only the national anthem, but also the ASEAN hymn. And that is indoctrination of some sort. All right. But that has to be balanced with a critical mind of what we wish ASEAN to be. If we study it as a formal institution that does not bend, all right, to the purposes, to the aims for which it was created, then I think something's wrong there. So this is where I think we have to see if it is being taught as a cultural practice, but not culture in, again, the sense of artifact, but something which is alive. Right? And what these processes are, so on and so forth. And this is a difficult task. It's like we're really looking at curriculum. And I don't know what the cases in Indonesia is. Finally, ma'am, you were talking about, this is what we see, right? The realism is back in vogue, right? I think we have to make a distinction between the ontology, the world that realists have designed for us, have tried to explain to us, from the world, okay, that is there, but which we cannot see, because the language that we have is foreign to it. We do not see peoples because we see states. We do not see togetherness because we see sovereignty. All right. We do not see harmony because we see hard power, and so on. But if we somehow shift and begin to use or translate, okay, these processes from our own lived experience, perhaps we might be able to see that a realist perspective is not realistic. So when I say realistic, is the fact that what we see is ideal because it is not happening? Or is it ideal or idealistic in the sense that we see it? In many spheres of social life, we actually see it, but we don't see its principles and its processes on the level of the state. So I think there's a question there. When we say that it is idealistic, is it because this is something that doesn't exist? Is consensus something that does not exist? If you were to brand what I'm trying to say as idealistic, is it something that doesn't exist? I think it exists. The question is, how do you use it? Where do you use it? Who do you push, right, to use it? I think end there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kevin. Interesting insights there. Probably this is something that we can all consider as a call to action, not just for those who are, doing diplomacy, but all stakeholders. As you said, it all boils down to going back to the level of the people. We have a few more minutes and we can probably take another round of questions. So, Ibu.
Thank you. My name is Emilia. I'm a senior researcher at the Research Center for Politics. First, I would like to congratulate Dr. Henry Villanueva for the book. It's very wonderful to see and read your books. And I have some question. First, I came across on your idea about how to deliver the voices of the peoples. But when we see ASEAN as a group of countries, 10 countries, they are completely different countries. If you take example like Indonesia or Philippines who are fully democratic, you can say there are many ways to deliver the voices of the people. But how about in Thailand? Is there any ways to deliver the voice of the people? If the voice say something about the king, can they survive? Or how about the people from Vietnam or Myanmar? If they say something about the government, can they survive? Or even when they in Singapore or Malaysia, when they criticize the government, can they survive their work, their job, their future, and apply the same to other countries? So this way, I would like to ask, how do you mean that delivering the voice of the people will be applied, especially in 10 ASEAN countries, like 10 brothers with 10 different character, but we see each other and still eat dinner at the same table every night. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So her question is about the challenges posed by diversity and, in terms of how do we apply what Dr. Kevin said about making it people-centered. So other questions before we... there's another hand. Okay, please. Yeah. Yeah. One more question before we ask Dr. Kevin. Any other hands? Okay, Ina.
Morning, sir. I'm Ina from the Philippine Embassy. So my question is, the proposed idea is very good to think about, but also something that at present for us is something that exists in the utopian world. When UN was born, it was an offshoot of a revolution, of a war actually. So what would it entail, in your opinion, to have this idea operationalized? Thank you.
Yeah, interesting questions there. Yeah, just to add question, further context on the second question about comparing it to the West, because um, just to take note, a few weeks ago we just celebrated the 70th anniversary of the Bandung Conference, and one of the ideas that I got from the activities that I attended was, of course, the continued effort to decolonize the international system, given that when Bandung was convened, it was really a group of developing countries saying that they don't want to be either aligned with the West or with Russia at that time. And during the discussions, ASEAN was cited as one of the offshoots of the Bandung Conference. And now that we are facing so many challenges, from the tariff war, from the conflict between the US and China, and having developing countries again be forced to take sides, there is that renewed call again to decolonize how we view the international order. So I guess the topic of the Dr. Kevin's presentation makes it more even timely. So probably it would be interesting to get your insights on that aspect. So yeah, Dr. Kevin.
Okay, smashing questions. You're giving me a run for my time and money here, so thank you. Let me begin with the last two questions. The UN was an offshoot of a revolution. Right. Interestingly, ma'am, I decided to title my presentation today, "The Togetherness of Peoples, a Quiet Revolution." Right. I don't know how it's going to happen. Right. I do not mean to speak in terms, as a prophet, I think, although I have a sense that there might be something that will push us towards thinking or towards accepting that there is something that is growing in ASEAN. This is the brute fact. Siru was very clear. If we think of an alternative, and in my case, I'm thinking of a radical alternative, nobody buys ASEAN, but it is a brute fact. ASEAN is a reference point. Okay, it is a reference point. And if we have to look at some kind of revolution, all right, I think the metaphor of a revolution need not necessarily be people rising up in arms or individuals rising up in arms. Okay. But peoples as groups, as communities, all right, challenging the established order. Decolonization opened up the world. Right? And I think we're only really still beginning to feel the effects of decolonization. Suddenly, you have groups or communities that wish to define themselves, like I said, in the context of what is going, for example, in the UN, right? Who wish to have a say, a voice in international affairs. Right? But the problem is that the structures, or the structure, is a structure between great powers. And this is why we don't know what's going to happen with Taiwan, although, yeah. We don't know what's going to happen with us. My guess is that if any one of the 10, hopefully East Timor already comes in, decides to move out, it somehow is the end of ASEAN. It's the end of it. We've made an investment to stay together, to stick together. The challenge, I think, is for our state leaders to see how that organization can mature more in terms of our own cultural practices, not in terms of, say, a legalist paradigm. This is a long-term agenda. Okay, I don't see this happening easily amongst our scholars. Okay, but if we are decolonizing, for example, curriculum, mind you that even in the West, I graduated from the University of Leeds, they are decolonizing their program of studies in political science. They're looking at texts which come out of other regions. And I think this is crucial. Again, the conceptual aperture is critical. Okay. And this is where I embolden Southeast Asian scholars to actually talk about their work. Okay. And to have our own criteria for publishing our work, so on and so forth. Okay. So that we can have a say in terms of how ASEAN is developing, how ASEAN is being constructed as a regional organization. What prompted me, therefore? What prompted me? Okay, was that, again, a brute fact. I was able to work in both or with both organizations. I am Filipino and Spanish. So I have worked at the European Commission, and I saw firsthand how we do it there. It is different. The way of doing international politics in Europe is different. It is not worse. It is not better, but it is different. And I have worked with ASEAN. So the way we negotiate in ASEAN is very different from the way that we negotiate in the EU. Okay. And the UN is different. This is what prompted me to write the book. I was first puzzled at the way in which, and somehow I think slighted or hurt by the way that other regional organizations or other countries talk about us, not look at us. I think there has to be a distinction there. It's not because they look at us as second-class citizens, but the way they talk about us is second-class. There is a disjuncture from the language that they use, from the way that they're doing it. And I think the reason is because they don't know how to do it. So the challenge here is that we have to understand each other, ourselves, so that we can explain it to them. If we don't understand ourselves, we don't have a language of our own in international politics, not on the level of states, because I think on the level of states, more or less, there are countries like, I think Indonesia is, Indonesia is quite mature in terms of, but the Philippines, we're still grappling with this. Yeah, we don't know. Is this a democracy or what kind of a democracy is this, so on and so forth. I don't think we're happy. I don't think we're happy at all in the Philippines in terms of our political system. All right, but we're not talking about it. Okay, so I think as a country there has some kind of political maturity that has yet to happen. So one reason was this. I saw a kind of an imbalance. Okay, a limitedness. So when you look at, say, for example, the work of Susan Strange at the London School of Economics back in 1999, she somehow castigated the international system, in her own words, as West failure. Thinking about it, I don't think it's not really West failure. I think it's West limits. I think it's limited in time and space, and we have tried to adapt it, right? Before their diplomats came over, we had our way of exchanging in Southeast Asia, more fluid and so on. Before diplomats, Renaissance diplomacy from Italy came to our shores, we had our way of navigating our communities and so on. So that was one that prompted. The other thing that prompted me to write the book was my experience in Taiwan. because I got a fellowship in Taiwan just before I got the fellowship here at UIII. And my experience in Taiwan was, I asked myself, they are beautiful people. They work. Their system works. How can they not be recognized as a legitimate member of the international community? Something's wrong with the UN. So I said to myself, is it the UN, or are they actually the principles which underpin the UN which have to be challenged? I think it is unfair, all right, to criticize the founders of the UN, hook, line, and sinker, for being egotistical. I think there was something there. There was a revolution. There was an honest way of looking at how we could possibly build the world. Obviously, Churchill had something in mind. He looked more at regional organization. Roosevelt had something in mind. Russia had something in mind. Chiang Kai-shek was somehow sidelined. He was there, but he was never really consulted, so on and so forth. The great powers had, different. Okay, so it's not as if it was a naive project, but definitely it was looking towards establishing some kind of order. And I think we're at that stage now where we don't know whether we're going to go back. Right? The UN really, I said to myself, is dysfunctional. I don't think it works anymore. So we have to speak up. Those of us who are scholars and intellectuals in our universities have to speak up about how those who are in the field of international relations have to speak up. And I think maybe the reforms are just not radical enough. We just have to look at the voices from the edge. We have to look at the voices from the edge. And this I think ties with the last question, the voice of peoples, the voice. When we talk about the voice of peoples, I think we also have to distinguish, when we say the voice of peoples, are we talking about, and this is a difficult one. When we're talking about the voice of peoples, are we talking about individual complaints in Thailand? Interest groups in Thailand or interest groups in Myanmar, Malaysia, so on and so forth. Are we talking about that? Or are we actually talking about a people? And this is crucial to the project. A people has to be defined. If, for example, they do not represent their own language, they do not worship together, they do not have a name to call themselves, they're not people. They're part of a people, they belong to a people. So we have to know to whom they're actually asking for accountability. Right? So that has to be challenged. So Myanmar is explosive. That's an explosive case. All right. I think they should go back to their institution. If you were to look at it from this paradigm, the ethnic groups have each to look back at their own stories and look back at their constitution as a country, whether they're going to stay as one or not. I'm not sure. Yeah. But in the case of ASEAN now, after Malaysia, the Philippines is assuming chairmanship, right? So there is somehow a rule. I think what's interesting is, if you observe, that there is some kind of a norm in ASEAN. I think if we see ourselves as people somehow, not fully, we respect. But where there are countries that are somehow iffy, we are jumping chairmanship. There is meaning in that. That's not a procedural matter. There is a substantive question that is behind that. And that's where I think we have to focus our thoughts and our work. There are substantive issues in ASEAN. I think ASEAN is trying to do its best. When the communique in 2012 was suspended, I said to myself this morning, and was preparing for the talk, and I said to myself, what would I say if they say, well, what happened? What happened to the communique in 2012? Well, it's precisely that. It was the exception that brought the norm of togetherness into relief. We cannot see togetherness if we did not see when we are not together. But in the case of Myanmar, or rather in the case of Cambodia in 2012, we agreed we agreed to disagree. So it was a matter of togetherness. Yeah. A matter of kinship. And kinship there is based on consensus. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kevin. So that ends our forum for today. Such thought-provoking, eye-opening ideas that were presented there by Dr. Kevin. Hopefully, this will lead to what we call a paradigm shift in terms of, improving how ASEAN works, and not just ASEAN, but of course the entire international order. As I said, ASEAN is a work in progress. So hopefully in the years to come, we'll be able to see some changes slowly but surely. But anyway, if you're interested with some of the ideas that were discussed, the book is available outside. So you can buy a copy, and hopefully Dr. Kevin would be able to sign your copy of the book. We have some refreshments here. So before you go, I hope you enjoy some of the refreshments that we prepared. Again, thank you very much on behalf of Dr. Kevin and BRIN. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair Salamat, for leading the discussions. Dr. Fernandez's book is displayed outside the room, maybe with the special prize, I guess. We invite the chair, Dr. Villanueva, discussion, and all the participants to take a picture outside in front of the lift. And what chair said that there are the refreshment provided by the Philippines Embassy in the corner of this room. Please help yourself. Thank you for coming, and hope we meet in the future event. Thank you.
Wissam welcome from Tunisia, working in Tunisian embassy. So nice person from North Africa holding
Please, everyone. Boleh.
Before the next school year. Thanks so much.